We are just delighted to have you here today, and I want to thank everyone for coming, of course. First, I want to extend my gratitude, of course, to the North Shore Juneteenth Association for their partnership, as well as the Melrose Public Library and our Library Board of Trustees for hosting us here this evening. And I want to thank Brianna Garcia from my staff, who put in a tremendous amount of work to make sure that this would go off well this evening, and so far, so good. And I want to thank Senator Lewis and Rep. Lipper-Garabedian for being with us today and for all their work up on Beacon Hill about a lot of issues we care a lot about. We're going to be hearing from them in a few minutes. And of course, but why are we here? So Juneteenth is a celebration not of when enslaved people were emancipated, but when the last remaining enslaved people of Texas learned of their freedom. And, this was over 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. It was actually after the end of the Civil War. It was 2 months after President Lincoln was assassinated. And that's remarkable when you think about it, that good news traveled so slowly throughout the United States. And today we are here as a city. We want to acknowledge that celebration, that good news, but also recognize the impact of our nation's legacy of slavery that continues to this day, and that we recognize in our community that there's a lot more work to be done. And as important as it is to recognize the pain of the Black community and what they have endured, it's equally important for us that are on the outside of that community, perhaps, to witness, to appreciate, to really make space for Black joy and share in that success, share in that liberation and join in that aspiration, here in Melrose to be one community open to all. And so today we start with the first recognition and flag raising of Juneteenth here in Melrose. I'm also very excited to announce a small gesture on behalf of the city, and that we're going to be providing to the Melrose Public Library $1,000 from our community outreach funds to provide additional resources for Black authors and LGBTQ plus authors and programming to advance our community mission. And I am a poor spokesman, and so what I would like to do is hand it over to Nicole McClain, who is the founder and president of the North Shore Juneteenth Association, to get us going.
Hello, everybody. Good evening, and thank you, Mayor Brodeur, and thank you to Brianna as well for helping to put this together today. I'm happy that all of you came out to recognize Juneteenth in the Melrose community. That's amazing. So give yourself a round of applause for that. That's awesome. Good job. Juneteenth is recognized as a holiday in 48 states and recently became a state holiday in Massachusetts last year. This holiday, as Mayor Brodeur said, commemorates the 2-year delay and then finally the notice of freedom given to Black men, women, and children in Galveston, Texas. When General Gordon Granger rode into Galveston, Texas in June 19, 1865, these are the words he spoke to the enslaved Black Americans there. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation provided by the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The freed men are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and to work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts, and they will not be supported in their idleness, neither there nor elsewhere. While the order was critical to expanding the freedom to enslaved people, the racist language used in that general order really did solidify the continued fight for freedom that would continue for Black Americans. I must add that before this order was provided, in Mississippi, Louisiana, and other points east, enslavers were migrating their slaves to Texas to escape the reach of the Union Army. More than 150 slaves were forced to make the trek west. After this order was given, it took an additional 2 years before Black Americans were able to celebrate the Juneteenth holiday. The enslavers continued to oppress Black women, children, and men, and cruelly punish them in every way imaginable. 250 slaves were in Galveston, Texas, when this order was given. The events of 2020 shined a huge light on the fight for basic human rights that has continued since Black men, women, and children arrived in America. The disparities in healthcare that COVID-19 made apparent, the deaths of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and more recently, Daunte Wright and Daniel Poord, and so many more at the hands of law enforcement, have all shown this fight continues daily for absolute equality for Black Americans. The acknowledgement of Juneteenth as a federal holiday, it was a long-fought battle. It didn't just happen this year. People like Opal Lee, like the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation, these people have been fighting for this to be a holiday for very long before now. And we're happy to say that their fight was won, and that today we can stand here and say that Juneteenth is a federal holiday. Black people have been pushing for this for years. We are extremely excited to see the fruit of the labor and will rejoice because dismissing the work and people that did the work would be shameful. Ain't I a woman and I am a man are historical statements that sum up the fight for equity. Banning race theory in schools, refusing to reimagine policing, refusing to acknowledge system of oppression that plague every area of our society, and blocking reparations legislation does not honor this holiday. Those actions let us know that while we celebrate, we must continue to keep the bigger picture in focus. Juneteenth highlights how far we have come and how far we have yet to go. The flag represents hope and resilience. The flag represents how far we have come. In 1865, Black people began to build a life for themselves in America, to reunite forcefully separated families, and to make decisions for themselves. Doing so despite having nowhere to go or any financial foundation from which to start. The flag represents how far we have come and just how far we have to go. Created by Ben Haith in 1997, the design of the Juneteenth flag depicts a bursting new star on the horizon. The star represents a new freedom, a new hope for the future. The red, white, and blue colors are used to show that enslaved Americans and their descendants are part of America, and that Black history is American history. North Shore Juneteenth Association is honored to share this holiday with you. Our organization was established in 2017 with the mission of spreading awareness about the Juneteenth holiday, educating the broader community about positive aspects of Black American culture, and dismantling racism using events and programming as tools for change. We invite you to join us on Facebook and Instagram at NSJA. We are honored to celebrate Juneteenth and this Juneteenth flag raising with you. Thank you for celebrating Juneteenth here today. Happy Juneteenth.
Thank you very much, Nicole, for your powerful words and coming to the community and sharing them with us. As I mentioned before, our state delegation is going to be speaking next. And Nicole, there's one issue in the things that you talked about that are important today, here and now, and that's voting access. And you see what's happening in so many places in the country that is so fundamentally un-American. Strategies to disenfranchise Black Americans, folks in vulnerable communities, And I'm happy to say that unlike some of our brother and sister states, quite the opposite is happening in Massachusetts. The Massachusetts legislature and the governor are standing up strong to protect and advance access to the ballot. And I wish we could take it nationwide. It's going to be a state-by-state fight. But here in Massachusetts, we can be proud of the legislature, proud of the governor, and particularly proud of our delegation for leading that fight. And I want to bring up first Kate Lipper-Garabedian, our state representative, for a few words.
Thank you, and what a good evening. It's going to be a while for me and probably for many of you not to take for granted what we're getting to do today, to be together on such an important event. And I want to thank everyone who's been involved in this, the North Shore Juneteenth Association, Mayor Brodeur and your great team at the city, the library, the Human Rights Commission, and everybody who's here today. It's really meaningful for all of us to do this together. I think there's no better place to do it than in front of a public library, which is a truly American institution that's dedicated to a common, shared, free knowledge, a commitment to lifelong learning and enlightenment. And I think about that from my own vantage of growing up in Richmond, Virginia, which was the capital of the Confederacy. My house in the city was not even a mile from an aptly named Monument Avenue, in which the city had seen fit, decades before I was born, to erect monuments along that street to men who had fought and lost a war to preserve a system of enslaving human beings. We had them up on these high, grandiose pedestals, and I remember in high school the consternation and the agitation, most of it coming from outside the city limits, about a decision to also add a statue of our homegrown hero, the Black tennis legend Arthur Ashe, who was also an incredible humanitarian and an advocate for racial justice. And I'm glad to say that very soon, his will be the only statue that is still on Monument Avenue in Richmond, Virginia. But juxtaposed against that, I went to the Richmond City Public Schools. And for the first 9 years of my career there, I had more black classmates than white classmates. I had more black teachers than white teachers. Both of my principals were black. And yet I can't remember a single lesson, a curriculum, a project, a celebration that mentioned the word Juneteenth. And that's deeply saddening because, as we've heard today, this is a moment that should be communally and officially recognized for everyone. I'm sure that many of my classmates and their families did celebrate Juneteenth, but they did it with their churches or their neighborhoods, their civic organizations. It wasn't officially acknowledged, and that was a loss for them, and it was certainly a loss for me. It's the same when I was a teacher in the Atlanta Public Schools, which is arguably the capital of the New South, where all of my students were black. Juneteenth wasn't in my textbooks. It wasn't in our state standards. It wasn't in curriculum that was taught. What a lost opportunity for all of us to imagine what kind of world we wanted to be in light of where we had been. So it was really humbling. It was honestly a little embarrassing that last year, about this time, when I was your state representative and working out of a basement, that I had an opportunity to vote to make Juneteenth a state holiday, and it wasn't part of my vocabulary. It wasn't part of my personal history. So it was both humbling and incredibly honoring to get to join a unanimous legislature in putting that bill to the governor and seeing him sign it, because it's meaningful. It's truly meaningful. You know, as the previous speakers have very eloquently said, over the last year, we've had another one of these really painful but necessary inflection points where we're thinking about what kind of community we want to be, how our nation can live up to the values on which we were built. And so, you know, symbols, official holidays, words, they're not sufficient, but they're certainly important for progress. So, I think about all of the ways in which conversations will happen now that we see Juneteenth on each one of the calendars moving forward for our kids and their schools, for at home, and so forth. And Juneteenth is more than just the flag we're going to raise. It's bigger than that because it's not just a symbol. It creates a space for us as a community and as a country to think about where we want to go. It gives each one of us a chance to see that word etched into the calendar or the flag flying by the library and contemplate personally what that means to us, what it means to our history, and what it means for us where we want to move forward. It's an opportunity for conversation and dialogue among our classmates, our parents, our colleagues, our neighbors, and most importantly, it's an opportunity to commit to further action, to continue this long progress toward a more just, a more free society. So I'm very proud and humbled and honored to get to celebrate today with all of you, and I'm incredibly excited to get to do it next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. So thank you so much for all of your work to make our community better for our kids and for each other, and I'd love to turn it over now to our State Senator Jason Lewis.
Thank you so much, Representative Lipper-Garabedian. It's so wonderful to join everyone tonight as Melrose comes together to celebrate Juneteenth National Independence Day. I want to thank, of course, Mayor Brodeur and the city, the Melrose Public Library, the North Shore Juneteenth Association, and everybody else who has made this possible tonight. Recently, the Massachusetts Senate chamber at the Massachusetts State House was renovated. After an extensive process, senators voted to inscribe one wall of the chamber with a particularly meaningful quote. It had to be from a person with historical roots here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And what we ended up voting on was we selected these words from Frederick Douglass. And maybe you're familiar with what he said. Truth, justice, liberty, and humanity will ultimately prevail. And once the State House reopens to the public, I encourage you to visit and take a look at the new Senate chamber, and you'll see those words prominently displayed. On the journey to a more perfect union, as imagined by Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, John Lewis, and many other black leaders through the centuries, the recognition of Juneteenth as both a state and a federal holiday is indeed another important step forward. Last July, I was very proud to join Representative Lipper-Garabedian and all of our other colleagues in the Massachusetts legislature on a bipartisan basis to make Juneteenth an official state holiday. And then, as I'm sure you know, last week, President Biden signed legislation making Juneteenth National Independence Day the 12th legal public holiday in the United States, to be celebrated annually on June 19th, although we're making this Juneteenth week here in Melrose to commemorate the end of slavery. Juneteenth is the first new national holiday since Martin Luther King Day was established in 1983. As you've heard already tonight, black communities have long celebrated Juneteenth throughout the United States. But now, all Americans will recognize and celebrate Juneteenth. It is a day for each of us to face our nation's history truthfully, to acknowledge the systems of white supremacy and racial oppression that are deeply embedded in our institutions and our society, to appreciate the progress that has been made to advance civil rights and racial justice, and most importantly, to commit ourselves, each one of us, to the hard work of anti-racism necessary for America to truly realize its founding ideals. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator and Representative, and for that. It is work that I know goes on, and it is incredibly important work. Thank you for all your hard work up at the State House. And next up, very excited to welcome to Melrose and welcome to the microphone Reverend Andre Bennett. He's of the Zion Baptist Church. Reverend.
Good evening. I am the Reverend Dr. Andre Bennett. I serve as the pastor of youth and young adults at Zion Baptist Church in Lynn. You might hear an accent. That accent comes from Jamaica. Liz Wright has a song, I Remember, I Believe. It starts with the words, I don't know how my mother walked her troubles out. I don't know how my father stood his ground. I don't know how my people survived slavery. I remember, and that's why I believe. You see, they took us from our land. They brought us to the new world, and everything was done to destroy us. Everything was done to break us. Our names were taken from us. Our men were demasculated and demonized. Her women were raped and abused. Our children were ripped from us and sold in different parts of the country. But we kept fighting and we kept believing. We worked and we tilled the soil and we built an empire that we were not able to partake of. Everything was done to destroy us. But we knew the strength that ran through our veins. I heard earlier the mayor said, and I thank you, sir, and I thank you, Marblehead. I thank you, Melrose. I thank you, Melrose. I've been making the rounds, forgive me. I thank you, Melrose, for having me. I heard the mayor said something is happening that is deeply un-American. I want to slightly disagree with the mayor because for us it is very American. You see, we have always loved this country, but this country never loved us back. And today, here we are 400 and some odd years later, still trying to find the love that this country says it has for us. You see, it was always American that we were not able to vote. It was always American that we were not able to sit certain places, to eat certain places. Our children were not able to go certain schools. We were not able to live in certain communities. And if you think that we have gotten very far from that, I want to give you a name to hold on to, Aman Arbery. You see, it was just a young man who decided to go for a run in his neighborhood, and somebody saw him and thought that he did not belong there because he doesn't look like he belonged there. And his life was taken away. And we have today in Washington, D.C., men and women who are making laws defending what is happening to my community. When a police officer can sit in the neck of my brother for 9 minutes and some odd seconds and waited until his life was taken away from him, and we still have people defending the right of that individual, it is always American to snuff us out. We have loved this country hard and deep, but this country fails to love us back. There was a woman in 1955 who decided she had had enough. And she decided she was no longer going to get up. She was going to sit down in order to stand up. And for 384 days, the Montgomery bus boycott went on, because Rosa Parks decided that I have given enough. I have worked long and I have worked hard. I have toiled enough. I have sweat enough, and I have just enough right to sit if I feel like sitting. And here we are, whilst we are grateful that it is finally recognized as a federal holiday. Understand this, Melrose. We know that the fight is far from over, because we're not gonna allow the forces there be, to whitewash certain things and give us one thing, but then take everything away from us with one hand. Yes, my sister, they declared Juneteenth a federal holiday, but if you look down south and out west, almost every state has passed or is in the process of passing legislation that will permit my brothers and my sisters from lifting their voices. We have got to continue fighting the good fight because we are far from home. And let me say this, whilst Massachusetts is doing well, we still have communities here in Massachusetts, cities and towns here in Massachusetts, where one school district gets up to $18,000 per student. And across the street in another zip code that is changed by just one digit, they earn they get $13,000 per student. The difference is one of the school district is 98% white and the other one is 98% Latinx. We have a problem in this country, and we have a problem in this state. And yes, we are going to enjoy the celebrations, and we're going to take the little wins when we get them. But understand that the little wins mean nothing if you keep taking the big stuff away from us. If there are laws that make it so that I can't live in neighborhoods that I feel like living in, if there are laws that make it so that my kids can't go to school where your kids can go to school, that is a problem, and we gotta keep fighting. I have been, like I said, doing these Juneteenth speeches, and call me a pessimist if you want, because it is bittersweet for me. It should not have taken so many years for Juneteenth to be a federally recognized holiday. It should not have taken so many years. Matter of fact, we should not have needed a Juneteenth because my people should not have been in slavery to begin with. So call me Debbie Downer. I'll take it. I'll take the name. I'll take the title. I said to them in Lynn and in Salem, because you see, I've read a number of articles where it said that Reverend Andre Bennett is anti one thing or anti another thing, because Reverend Andre Bennett keeps speaking up. Because when I hear people say we're going to make America great again, or we're going to keep America great, Reverend Andre Bennett has to say America was never great for my parents. It was never great for my foreparents. It is not great for me today. And if we keep going the same way that we're going, it will not be great for my son. So if you want to call me anti-whatever, that's all right. I am fighting for full, total, complete freedom. And I will say this, and shut up in a minute, I promise. I'm a Baptist preacher, all right? We get excited. We get excited when we get a mic. We get excited. Baptist preachers get excited when we get a mic. I will say this. I am not anti-law enforcement, even though it's been said, because I am one of them that believes we need to defund the police. Yes, I believe that. And when I say defund, I never said dismantle. There's a difference. You see, Melrose, you might not know this because you don't struggle with this issue. But you see, in cities like Lynn and Salem and Lawrence, when my son turns up at school, he has to go through a metal detector. He has to be scanned by a police officer. You don't understand the kind of trauma that puts upon my child. What am I saying? If we stop funding, if we stop putting all that money into the police department, militarizing our police, and start creating programs, funding programs, social work, social services for our young people, for our young men and our young women, we wouldn't need to have police officers demonizing our young boys and young girls. And I am happy, I put a plug in it, I'm happy to say that after many years of fighting in Lynn, in the city of Lynn, after many years of fighting and talking with the county sheriff who was then the chief of police, and I'll never forget, we had a meeting with the then chief of police, Coppinger, who's now the Essex County Sheriff. And Coppinger, almost every talk he talked, he pounded the desk. And when we got out of the meeting, his deputy chief came up to me and he said, "Reverend, you won't necessarily reach him by being so angry." I said to his deputy chief, who was then chief recently retired, I said, "Sir, how did you know? What made you believe I was angry?" He said, "Well, you spoke with such passion. You know, it's almost anger." I said, "Did I once lift my hand?" I said, "Did I once pointed my finger?" I said, "How many times did you count the chief pounded the desk while he spoke to me? Did you go to him and tell him you won't necessarily reach the community by being so angry?" What is the point I'm making? I gotta watch how I talk. I've gotta watch, my brother, how I approach people, how I speak, how I look, because otherwise I'll be called the angry black man. Hello, somebody. But then I'm allowed to be spoken to anyway. I have a daughter who's 26 years old. Yes, 26 years old. So I'm not a kid. And I've been pulled over by a police officer and they call me boy. In the presence of my children. I'm a grandfather. I'm a new grandfather, by the way. Here is the point that I'm making. We fought long and we fought hard in Lynn. We had some very difficult conversation with Chief Coppinger. He left and Chief McClain became chief. We had some difficult conversations with him. We had some difficult conversations with Mayor Flanagan Kennedy. And we had some difficult conversations with the current mayor that's there. Well, I am happy to report, because when we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. I am happy to report that the mayor of Lynn recently announced that he has allocated $500,000 for a rapid response, an emergency 911 response team, so that police officers are not showing up to deal with situations that they are not trained or qualified to deal with. You're not hearing me. That's what I mean when I say defund the police. Because when a police officer is called to a home with somebody who has mental illness and the police officer goes there and pull out a weapon, it is a matter of escalation at that point. Police officers aren't necessarily trained in social services. We will keep fighting because it's affecting my brothers and my sisters. So Melrose, when you walk by the street and you look at the Juneteenth flag, for however long it's going to be there, ask yourself, what more can I do in Melrose? How else can I work to ensure that my black and brown brothers and sisters are completely free, are totally equal, accept and understand and realize what equity is? Because we're still fighting. We're still struggling. This is not just for a moment. This is not just today. This is hundreds of years, and we still have many more years to go. Thank you, Melrose, for recognizing Juneteenth. Thank you. Thank you for recognizing Juneteenth. But I urge you, I beg you, do not stop fighting with us. Do not stop fighting with us. And finally, I'll say this. Like I said, I'm not anti a lot of things. And somebody said to me, I hate the way I sound like I hate America. That's not true. I love America. America has been good to me and my family. And I'm not anti-white. I'm anti-wrong. I have to keep saying that. I have to keep saying I'm anti-wrong. And if whites keep perpetuating wrong upon us, then I'm going to keep speaking about it. But if my brothers and my sisters, my white brothers and my sisters, decide to stand with us, because we know that the gains that we've made is not just because of our struggle. It is primarily born out of our struggle. But we've had allyship from the white community. So if you stand with us, if you link arms with us, we will march on together. We will march on to that place that is called freedom. Don't be threatened when you see a black family move in your neighborhood. Don't be threatened when you see a little black man driving through the community. Don't get scared when you see a black teacher or a black manager in the town office, the city office, the school. We need full and total representation. And we ask you to join with us in this fight. Let us continue, fight on until full, total, and complete freedom is recognized. God bless you this evening.
Joe, you're up next. I'm announcing my withdrawal from any more public speaking. Reverend, that was unbelievable. And how many communities plus your congregation on on Sundays or whatever it is you do? Unbelievable. You need more towels, my friend. You need more towels. Not in the program by my error. We're going to have Joe come up and say a few words about one of the real mainstays of the community for the last, since the 70s, Human Rights Commission here in Melrose. It started out as kind of a small activist community group, transformed itself really into a statutory commission recognized by the state. It actually started out in reaction to a couple of incidents of anti-Semitism here in the community, and it has grown to be a wonderfully diverse and rich resource for the community. So Joe, if you want to say a few words, good luck.
So this is what I get for coming up to say hello to the mayor. Now I have to follow the Reverend. Oh, all right. Do the best I can. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. State representation, Reverend and ladies from the North Shore Juneteenth Association. Thank you all. And thank you, Melrose, for being here today and showing your support. So, I wasn't prepared to do this, but in line with what the Reverend shared, the state representative shared, what I come up with is a timeline. And that timeline started over 400 years ago. And it is a timeline and a trail that is stained with bodies, blood, families, land, economic loss, and sacrifice. So if we were to just connect the dots from 1619 to the 1700s, Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal, blah, 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 but that didn't include us, right? So then in the 1800s, you had, one of the first global economic failures that had to do with slavery. Because the founders of Goldman Sachs, the Lehman Brothers, which were Confederate officers, supplied the loans and the leverage for the buying and selling of human beings. Fast forward a little bit to the Civil War, when African Americans were enlisting, fighting for their freedom. What happened in places in the North, believe it or not? They were attacked. They were attacked, they were beaten, they were killed. I mean, there was a term that they called Irish confetti, which meant that bricks were thrown at the blacks that were in line to enlist in the military to fight for their freedom. So there are many instances throughout the time of this country that are shameful. We need to realize it, embrace it, and then have the intestinal fortitude to make a change, to do something about it. You know, events like this, conversations and things like that, that's fine. But what matters is what is the action that you're going to take. How can you make a difference? So the Reverend talks about all the fights and everything like that he dealt with the city of Lynn. I'm from Lynn. My parents were activists in Lynn. Members of the NAACP, members of the community. I remember when I was a little boy, we were marching in the city of Lynn because they were killing black teenagers in the city of Lynn, in the jail. And because every time they got arrested, mysteriously, they hung themselves for a traffic violation. They hung themselves. And then you talk about going to different communities. You know, we want Melrose to be welcoming. Let me just share with all of you what happened to me the day after I signed the closing agreement on my house in Melrose. I was standing on my lawn. My lawn. I just paid for the house. And you know Melrose, it's the city of the $500,000 fixer-upper. Right? So, as I was standing there, some guy who was drunk pulled up on my lawn. And I didn't want to engage with him, so I figured, let me call the police. There's a child in the car who's in danger. This person is drunk, pulled up on my lawn. So, I told the police came, and then I was the one that was approached on my property in my front yard. The officer put their hand on their weapon and told me to back up. My yard. I pay the mortgage. So, a couple of things could have happened. I could have engaged with this officer, which I didn't. Obviously, I'm still here. I could have been angry and just decided to turn in, shelter in myself, be angry at everybody in the neighborhood and in the community. But no, what I did, instead of being that guy who's angry yelling at the TV, I decided to do something. I am on the Human Rights Commission. I'm one of the commissioners. And I'm honored to be on the mayor's task force in anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, taking again into consideration the timeline of our country, what I ask you, what my challenge is to all of you, all this stuff, these speeches sound great, right? The flag is going to be awesome to be flying from the library. But what are you going to do tomorrow? right? We have the timeline. But it's up to you, all of you here in Melrose, to make a change. Easiest way to get hit by a car is get out in the street. And there's nothing like good trouble. And there's nothing like it. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
You ready? So, Allyson Livingstone has been a member of the community for three or 4 years, and her professional career is in DEI work. And as a member of the community, it's also clearly her passion because she has brought that skill to us, to some of the initiatives that Joe mentioned. And to Joe's point, to everyone's point, that's how it has to work, right? Take a look around yourselves right now. Just kind of eyeball someone and say hello to someone that maybe you don't know, because these are the folks that are going to do the work, that are going to build community, that are going to make the more perfect union, right? And I am so delighted to have her in the community, to have her helping with the DEI work that's going on in the city, and for, most importantly, her willingness to speak tonight, Allyson Livingstone.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Dr. Allyson Livingstone. I'm a mom and a wife. My family is right over there. Hello. I'm a black woman, and I'm a daughter of Jamaican immigrants. Yay! Crushing it, right? Yeah. I feel honored to spend time with one of my communities for the purpose of basking in the experience that is Juneteenth. Juneteenth is a time of celebration of the brilliance and contributions of black people everywhere. It is a time of acknowledgement and reckoning, community and remembrance. And Juneteenth is a call to political action for all of us. What's your call? Will you engage your political leaders and work to influence the ways they expand racial justice? Will you vote for intersectional racial justice? Meaning, will you center racial justice and disability justice? Racial justice and sexuality justice? Where are your limits? Push them. And let's be clear, the personal is the political. What are your plans for expanding intersectional racial justice where you live? Where you show up? Where your family shows up? If you are connected to professional or academic networks, including our city schools, what are your goals for expanding racial justice in those spaces? What are your goals? How do you know they're working? Who's involved? Who knows? How are you holding yourselves accountable? Use this time, these moments of Juneteenth, because as Angela Tate, a curator of the African American Women's History at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, it's an amazing place. I encourage anybody. It's back open in DC. Get there. As Angela Tate has shared, Juneteenth is not a fixed holiday. It's not a one-time thing. It's not a moment in time. It is ongoing. It is past. It is present. It is future. It is now. Find your call, and please tell everyone you know about it in honor of the Juneteenth that is ever present. Thank you. And I'll be passing it back to the North Shore Juneteenth Association.
All right, thank you, everybody. We are now in for a treat. We're going to hear the Black National Anthem, at least the first couple of stanzas. We're not going to do the whole song, but I'm happy that Brianna printed out the whole song for everyone to look at. And the singer of the Black National Anthem today is going to be Martina Campbell. Martina.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Let us march on till victory is won.
Thank you so much, Martina, and thank you, Melrose, for being here today. This was awesome. I hope you take the lessons and the voices that you've heard and really implement things and take action for racial justice and definitely intersectional racial justice. I love that Allyson pointed that out. I love that. So thank you guys for being here today, and happy Juneteenth. Oh, no, you have to say happy Juneteenth. Happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth!